Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this Aspire Applicants event for students that are interested in studying maths and/or physics at A-level or possibly further maths as well, and also are likely to be eligible for our Aspire programme, which we'll talk about more later on. Just a quick word, if you have already joined us for the event we ran earlier in the evening for students that were interested in geography, economics or politics, then you will find that the first part of this session is basically the same. So you might want to go make a cup of tea and come back in 10-15 minutes or so. So I'll just go over what we are going to do today. So my name is Ellen Walkinshaw. I'm Director of Progression here at the college. And what we're going to cover this evening is, first of all, an overview of the Aspire programme. As you can probably see, I've got 5 current students with me who were all in your shoes either just a year ago, those of them that are in the lower sixth, or 2 years ago, the 2 upper sixth students we've got with us. We're going to have a bit of a little quiz for you to take part in, and there'll be the chance for you to post questions for our Aspire students about any aspect really of their kind of college life, how they chose their A-level subjects, and anything about the Aspire programme. So you will be able to post those questions in the Q&A function. You can start posting them now if you like, but bear in mind we might answer some of the questions that you've got in the course of the webinar. So maybe leave it a little while and I'll remind you later on to start posting those questions. And I'll end with some advice about subject choice in STEM subjects, because I know that's something that's probably on lots of your minds at the moment, finalising your A-level choices. So first of all, a little bit about what the Aspire programme is. So the Aspire programme runs for the whole of your lower sixth year at college, and its purpose is to help you decide what it is that you want to study. So some of you might arrive already with a very clear idea of what you'd like to do after college, whether that be to go on to university or to perhaps start an apprenticeship. And you might even know already exactly what it is you want to study. But most people arrive not really knowing what they want to do. So Aspire really helps them decide what they'd like to do, and also helps them to make a competitive application for university or apprenticeship. So that's really the purpose of the programme. It is a weekly session, so it's an extra hour a week on your timetable. The Aspire classes tend to be a bit smaller than most other classes, so they're a little bit like a seminar at university in terms of their size, and you'll have a dedicated Aspire tutor. Now, as part of the Aspire programme, you have the opportunity to complete an extended project qualification, which is known as an EPQ, and we'll talk about that a bit in this session just now. So what exactly is an EPQ? So an EPQ counts as half an A-level, so it carries what we call UCAS points that are half what you would get for an A-level. And the beauty of the EPQ is that it really is up to the student what they would like to do their EPQ on. As long as the EPQ doesn't overlap with what they're studying in one of their A-level or BTEC subjects, you can really choose to do an EPQ on almost anything, and I'll show you some examples of EPQ topics in a moment. For most students, the EPQ takes the form of an extended essay, but lots of students, and particularly maybe some of you that might be interested in engineering or computer science, you might decide to produce an artifact. So your end product might not be an essay, it might be a piece of computer coding, and I'll show you an example of an architecture EPQ that might be of interest to some of you. And a few people, maybe people more likely to be interested in something like geography or biology, carry out field studies as well. But most people do write an essay for their EPQ. Universities really value the EPQ because it demonstrates those skills that they really want undergraduates to have in terms of being able to research a topic independently and understand things like how to reference and to be able to access more academic journal articles. And it does demonstrate, if your EPQ is in a topic that you end up applying for, it does demonstrate a really genuine interest in kind of like the subject you're applying to. Having said that, thinking about one student in the lower sixth, particularly at the moment, she is studying maths, physics, and further maths, but she also has a real interest in archaeology and anthropology, and that's what her EPQ is on. So it enabled her to continue with an interest in a more essay-based subject, whilst taking more STEM subjects at A-level. Some universities value the EPQ so much that they actually include a lower offer or make a lower offer for students that have achieved an A or an A star in their EPQ. So some of those universities are Bath and Birmingham, Exeter, Cardiff, York for some subjects, Queen Mary, London for some subjects. And just to give you a sense of how many students do achieve those top grades, in the most recent cohort, 78.2% of students that submitted their EPQs got A's or A stars. So we'll talk a bit about EPQ, although none of the students actually on the call are completing one, and they'll explain to you maybe why that is. But if you're doing 4 A levels, we would, on the whole, suggest not also doing an EPQ, but it's an option for you to take if you are on the Aspire programme. I've chosen some titles here that perhaps relate more to physics or math. So we had a question here about to what extent will orbital debris from past space endeavours impact humans in the future? Something that is problems being created that actually some Surrey University, for instance, locally are looking at ways to solve. One from last year looked at floating cities, so somebody that's interested in engineering. Quite a lot of interest in nanotechnology. Also something that's been in the news again recently, whether supersonic air travel should be returning. Something about terraforming Mars or Venus. Quite a lot of interest as well in Formula One. And this was quite interesting. Just last week, we were looking at an article about someone who, in a similar way, was using math to help find a hard drive that has a Bitcoin folder that had, I think they thought about £600 million worth of Bitcoin stored on it. So maths can be very useful in helping find lost things. In this case, it was somebody investigating how maths could be used to search an ocean for a lost plane. But yes, there can become some quite imaginative EPQ titles based around maths, physics, engineering. As I said, artifacts are also quite popular with students studying those sorts of subjects. So somebody set themselves a task of trying to build a remote controlled drone for less than £25. And an interesting one last year was more sort of product design, and marketing as well. Creating a unique and stable, sustainable piece of kitchen equipment. And what she ended up designing was a kitchen implement that has multiple different, had one handle for multiple different tools at the end of it. So those are some of the kind of titles that you might explore. Talking a bit now about EPQ, so Aspire more generally, and whether or not you'd be eligible for it. So we do look at GCSE scores. And if you are you arrive at college with an average GCSE score of around 6 or above, so I'm sure if you're interested in maths, I don't need to teach you how to work out an average, but think about what GCSE grades you're on track to get in your subjects. And then you would be eligible for the Aspire programme. Within the Aspire programme, we look at GCSE scores. And if you have a GCSE score of around 7 or above, we give you the opportunity to complete an EPQ in your first year. We just feel that those of you that want to complete an EPQ, if you are really getting those very, very top GCSE grades, you're probably ready for it in the first year. Those of you that have done very well at GCSE, but maybe not quite got those top grades, we just want you to check that you're okay with your main A-level subjects or BTEC subjects before you take on something extra with an EPQ. And those Aspire students would start researching and working on their EPQ in the first year, but actually write it up in the first term at the upper 6th. Now, as you'll realise from what I've said about our panellists not doing an EPQ, and there are lots of reasons why students might not do an EPQ. Many of our students do quite a lot of activities outside of college. So it might be performing arts or sport. They might have, caring responsibilities or other things going on outside college. Or they might just decide that actually the workload is quite enough doing 3 quite demanding, challenging A-levels, and they don't want to do an EPQ. And certainly if they're doing 4 A-levels, we wouldn't suggest doing an EPQ as well. Although some people do 4 A-levels and an EPQ, or perhaps 3 A-levels, a BTEC and an EPQ. But generally we'd probably advise against that. In terms of when you have to decide about the Aspire programme, you don't need to do anything about adding it to your application because it is dependent on GCSE results. We'll discuss the Aspire programme with you when you come to see us for an enrolment interview at the beginning of the next academic year. So you don't need to worry about anything in terms of letting us know that you want to be on it or anything. There are some things you can do to get ready for it, which I'll talk to you about at the end, but you don't have to actually get it added to your programme yet. So just thinking a little bit about the impact of the Aspire programme, because it is a big investment for college to build this into students' programme of study, and for the students themselves. They're giving up an hour a week on their timetable. So it has grown in size, more than doubled in its size since its sort of inception back in 2017. I suppose one way of measuring the success, although this is not just down to the Aspire programme, but we do feel it had a considerable impact, is that the percentage of students that are actually made offers from what we call Russell Group universities, so those universities with the most competitive entrance requirements, has increased from 21% to 30% in that time. If we take competitive universities more broadly, and so my preferred kind of measure really of a competitive university would be to use what the Sutton Trust call the Sutton 30 universities, which includes the 24 Russell Group universities and other universities that I think most people actually consider to be Russell Group universities, although technically they're not, such as Bath, Royal Holloway, Surrey, St Andrews. Then actually that percentage goes up to nearly 40%, so 39.7%. So it is successful in that way. 16 students in the current upper sixth are holding offers from Oxbridge, and also, I mean, there may be lots of you that are thinking about maths and/or physics, also thinking about biology and chemistry, and wanting to go on and study medicine, vet science, or dentistry. So it does help you with those sorts of courses as well. Having said that about university destinations, more and more, particularly in areas such as engineering and finance, which obviously maths and physics students might be interested in, there are a lot of opportunities in the sort of world of degree apprenticeships, and we talk about that through Aspire as well. Some of the ones that might be particularly interesting to students, those of you on the call this evening, might be ones with Thales, Jaguar Land Rover in terms of engineering, but RSM, Fidelity International, UBS for more finance-related degree apprenticeships. So yeah, that is also an option that we explore in Aspire. So that's a bit about the impact of the programme. In terms of destinations for students studying physics or math, both of those subjects are really versatile subjects. So particularly math, I would say. So our math A-level students go onto a whole range of different subjects. So I was on the last call, we were explaining that economics at A-level doesn't actually contain very much maths, and actually one of our students here does economics, and he'll probably be able to tell us that he doesn't use much of his maths in his economics at A-level. But if you wanted to go and study economics at degree level, there is a lot of maths in economics at degree level, so a maths A-level will be very useful for those sorts of courses. And that you can see that actually the number one university destination for A-level maths students from Reigate College are those kind of like courses in economics, business, finance, and so on. For physics, as you can see, various types of engineering feature, as you can imagine, very heavily in those progression routes. And those students would also be doing maths. So maths and physics are generally the subjects that would be needed for most types of engineering, almost without exception. And obviously physics and astrophysics there as well. So I think more interesting than listening to me talk is to hear from our current students who are really happy to talk to you. So I'm going to introduce them first of all, and they'll be able to say a little bit about what school they went to, what subjects they're studying here at college, and a little bit about their plans for the future. So we'll start with our upper sixth students first. So Harry, could you just introduce yourself first? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Harry. I went to the Warwick School, now known as Carrington, and I'm currently studying maths, further maths, physics and economics. Next year, I hope to be studying maths at the University of Cambridge.
Fantastic. And Holly?
Hi, I'm Holly. I also went to Carrington. I study maths, further maths, physics and history, and I'm hoping to study physics at Warwick.
Right, now just before I introduce the lower sixth students, you might want to start posting questions for these students in the Q&A. So remember, you can post those questions and we'll try and answer as many of them as we can on the call. So moving on to our lower sixth students, Matilda, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Matilda and I went to Oaks Park High School. I'm currently doing physics, maths and philosophy A-levels, and I'm planning on doing physics with astrophysics at university.
And Jess.
Hi, I'm Jess. I study maths, further maths and chemistry. I went to Stafford and I'm hoping to study maths at LSE.
And Lilietta.
I'm Lilietta. I went to Reigate School. I do maths, further maths, physics and chemistry, and I want to do maths at uni.
Fantastic, thank you very much. So yes, I do pop questions in the chat, which we'll post those students in a while. As I said, there is an interactive element to this evening. So there's going to be 10 multiple choice questions that pop up in the on your screens. We'll give you a few minutes to answer them. The panel have had a go at them already. So have a go at them. We'll give you sort of 4 or 5 minutes to work through those questions. And you can also, while you're doing those, be thinking about any questions you want to put in the Q&A for our panel. So we'll stay quiet for a bit to give you a chance to answer some of those questions. They're just fun questions, so please don't worry that you're going to be kind of, you know, it's not an entrance exam for this SPIRE programme, so don't take them too seriously. Thank you. Okay, fantastic. We've ended the quiz. Don't worry if you didn't finish. As I said, it wasn't a test, but the panel, they haven't had the answers, but we've been chatting about it. So some of these multiple choice questions, Catherine Johnson, a mathematician at NASA, plays a key role in which historic event? Harry, what do you think?
The first moon landing.
The first moon landing, fantastic. And just linked with that, it's a nice link there. We do also have a Women in STEM group at college. If I think Matilda has been part of that, and Jess as well, yes. I'm going to ask them to unmute. Is there anything particular you want to say about sorts of things you've done with Women in STEM?
We've watched some podcasts, we've had some group discussions, and we've planned some events to do in like International Women's Day and stuff. Yeah, but it's a really nice community to be in when you want to be with women with similar interests.
Okay, fantastic. So there's also Catherine Johnson there, nice link with Women in STEM. So John Nash, a mathematician known for his work in game theory, was the subject of which film, do you think? Jess?
Is it Beautiful Minds?
It was. Sorry, I was on mute. What I was saying was that I was quite surprised anybody would know the answer to this. I don't know whether there's some Googling going on at home, but you are right, or 36, so the majority of the biggest number of you got this right. Electrical engineering is what Rowan Atkinson, best known as Mr. Bean, studied at university. Moving on to the next question, and I can see that some of you were listening earlier on when I was talking about destinations. It is false, yes, you're right, that Reigate College students most of them go on to study maths at university. There's a whole range of other subjects that students study, and obviously we've got Holly with us, who is going on to study physics as an example. Now, this is an interesting question, and I think the one about EPQ. So the question was about which of those would make good EPQ questions, which ones also kind of current EPQ questions. And the answer is all of them, apart from the work of Isaac Newton. So when you choose an EPQ question, it needs to have kind of a debate about it. So I said none of our students are doing EPQ, but Harry, do you want to just say why would the work of an EPQ entitled "The Work of Isaac Newton" not be a good question?
There is no question. It's just a statement. The work of Isaac Newton, you could just like list facts off of Wikipedia for that one. Whereas with an EPQ question, you need to have a real debate, and there needs to be two sides of an argument.
Absolutely, yes. So we don't want just a descriptive narrative account of a mathematician's life. Okay, so this one, I have to say, I was super impressed. Matilda got this straight away. So can you tell us what the answer to question 6 was and why?
Yeah, the answer is 3. So it is the number of letters in the number. So number 6, there's 3 letters.
Well done. And this one did take people, even the further maths a second year students quite a while to work out, but Harry did work it out. What did you think the answer to 7 was?
9 to 2.
Fantastic, good. So not difficult maths, but I think one that you might need have had to have a pen and paper handy to work out. I'm not sure if any of the we started having a chat here, so I'm not sure if any of the panel got onto question 8, but the correct answer for question 8, let me just check my answers. I think you're correct. Yes, so 36% of you got that right. It is buy one, get a second half price. So well done. Now, this is just for people thinking about studying physics, really. The actual answer, actually, let me ask Holly, which of those things did you study in your first year of A-level physics?
The answer is all of them. You do all of them in the first year of A-level physics.
Right, so yeah, so physics really is kind of like about the way it's approached is really about applying it to kind of real world situations, as you can see from those topics that you study. And then in the upper 6th, so you haven't quite got to the end of the upper 6th for physics, but the same is true there. You would get to study all of those things. So as you've heard, Matilda, for instance, really particularly interested in astrophysics. I'm sure just looking forward to going on and being able to study that next year in physics. So just a bit of a fun kind of quiz, seeing how much kind of like you understand about what you're going to be studying and things like that, but not to be taken too seriously. So what we really do want to spend a bit of time being able to do before I have some kind of concluding remarks and bits of advice for you before we go, is for you to be able to ask questions of the panel. So a lot of questions have come in already, but if you still would like to post questions, please do pop them in the Q&A function, and we will, they're being passed to me as we speak, and we will answer them. So there's a few questions about kind of the jump from A-level, so from GCSE to A-level maths. So this is still obviously quite fresh in the memory of our lower 6th students. So maybe Jess, would you like to answer that? What's the jump from GCSE to A-level maths been like?
I found the jump quite manageable. At first, we just did some topics that you find at the end of GCSE maths, and if you do further maths GCSE as well, that kind of ties in quite nicely. So it wasn't too bad. It was quite smooth.
Thank you. You sort of answered one of the other questions, part of one of the other questions, which was whether studying further maths at GCSE helped. Maybe this might be a good question for Harry. Could you just tell us, because you've been here, you've had a lot of maths lessons since you've been at college, so you've had a year and a half of 8 hours of maths lessons a week. Just a little bit about what is maybe a typical maths lesson like, or what are maths lessons like at Reigate? Thank you.
Maths lessons are quite good at Reigate, I'd say. They're usually about 2 hours long, and you'll look at a topic in general, you'll learn about the topic, and then you'll go off and do lots of questions on that and really like work on repetition and getting good at it.
Okay, fantastic. I don't know whether I think again it's really a best question for one of the upper 6 students. So maybe Holly, because obviously you've now completed most of your content of your courses. Do the further maths or maths courses in A-level cover AI at all? Do you know the answer, Holly?
No, I don't think they do. A lot of the topics within them of like previous, like I don't know, old not really old, but like they don't include AI.
Okay, fantastic. So this is really a question that I'll probably try and answer, and it comes up a lot. So our university is more impressed with 4 A-levels or 3 A-levels and an EPQ, and I'm afraid it's not a straightforward answer. Even Oxford and Cambridge will only make you an offer based on 3 A-levels. So Harry's offer is based on 3 of his A-levels, and also he'll have to sit the STEP paper, which is stands for 6th form extension paper in maths. However, having said that, if you are applying for maths, physics, engineering, computer science, a subject with a lot of maths content in it, maths and further maths is probably a good idea. And then if you do maths, further maths, and one other subject, so say maths, further maths, and physics, that if you're not 100% sure that that's the route you want to go down, it can be quite a kind of like narrow course choice, particularly if you realise maybe a few weeks or a term into further maths that you don't actually like maths as much as you thought you would, and you want to drop from further maths down to single math, you'd only have 2 A levels left, which would not be a full programme of study. So there are reasons for doing 4 A levels, particularly if 2 of those A levels are maths and further maths. But an EPQ can also be really useful. Particularly, as I said, if you want to keep the option open for being able to do kind of like carry on with an essay-based subject. So yeah, there are pros and cons, and it's something that we can talk to you more about at interview. So it really does depend. But even for Cambridge, although lots of people applying, particularly for maths and other STEM subjects at Oxford, Cambridge would have 4 A levels, it's not actually a requirement. So I hope I've answered that. A question about kind of like Aspire lessons. So I don't know whether Holly and Harry can remember as far back as last year in Aspire and what we used to do in Aspire. So maybe one of our current lower 6 students could talk a little bit about what they do in Aspire. So Matilda, would like to answer?
Yeah, so one of the things we covered is we worked in groups to come up with a presentation on different universities, which I found really helpful because it kind of made me find out about more universities in the area that I hadn't heard about before. You get lots of help with your personal statement, and we've looked at lots of stuff on different types of referencing because that's stuff you need to know for university. Yeah, we've done other group work looking into kind of different courses and what careers they can lead to, so all kind of stuff like that.
And we also do some debates as well. So we have certainly, I mean, Holly and Harry and Lilietta now are in my Aspire classes, and we've had debates. Lilietta, can you remember some of the topics we've debated? Yeah, so we can't, so I can't remember off the top of my head, but we do have either I choose a debate topic or the class puts forward different motions that they want to debate, and they vote on one that they would like to debate on. So we've had debates this year talking about how far AI is. So somebody mentioned about AI earlier. We've looked at whether AI is hindering or enhancing kind of creativity in the creative industries. We've looked at debates around whether voting should be made compulsory, whether the voting age should be lowered to 16. We had a debate which might be interesting for some math students about whether maths should be compulsory up until 18. So yeah, we have a whole range of motions that students choose to vote to debate, and then to really encourage you to develop those RSC skills that are important for university interviews, but also just general employment. We do a bit of that as well. If you really like debating, you can join Debate Club as well. Okay, so just another question that I'll answer quickly. Are only Aspire students eligible to do an EPQ? Yes, you need to be on the EPQ, the Aspire programme to do an EPQ, but you don't have to do an EPQ if you're on the Aspire programme. Now, this is a good question, I think, again, probably for one of the lower 6th students, so maybe Jess for this one. Were your GCSE grades the main factor that determined the A levels you chose?
Personally, no, I kind of just decided earlier in the year what I wanted to do. Obviously, you have to get the grade requirements to take a subject, but it was mainly just what I thought I was good at and what I knew I'd enjoy.
Fantastic. Okay, somebody's asked a question that I'll answer. At what point in your UCAS application process do you tell universities that you want to take a gap year? So there are 2 ways of doing this. The way that we would recommend is that when you make your application, which will be in the autumn term of your upper 6th year, you actually choose at that point to defer your entry. And that way you'll be made an offer, and the university knows that you'll be want to start a year later, and you've got that offer. You can go away and enjoy your gap year, and not worry about having to put an application in. The other way that you could do it is that you could wait until after your results in obviously at the end of your upper sixth year and apply as what we call a former student. So the advantage of that is obviously that you haven't had to worry about getting an application in during your upper sixth year, which is, can take some of the pressure off. But the disadvantage of that is that although obviously we do support students making an application once they've left us, it's not the same. You won't get the kind of same level of support as being a current student where you can pop up to careers at any point, ask any questions about your application, get all that help and support that you need. So we would advise students, if they know what it is they want to study and they just want to take a gap year, to do what we could defer their entry. So make an application in the autumn term of their upper sixth year. And it's just very simple. There's one kind of box in the UCAS form where you say that you want to start the year after. Having said that, most universities are absolutely fine with students taking gap years. But for courses sometimes with a high maths content, particularly the more competitive universities, I would check with the university before you decide to do that, because some of them do worry about what students are going to be doing in that gap year for those subjects where they'll be using a lot of maths, because I think they worry that, if you spend a year traveling, your maths brain might kind of go to sleep or something, and it might be quite hard to wake it back up again when you go and study a really hard maths course at university. So for heavily based maths-based courses, do check with the university what they think about gap years. But on the whole, they're quite open to it. So yeah, that's something to consider. Another question, when do you need to confirm your A-level choices? So again, that's probably one that I can answer. Obviously, we've got an idea of what you want to study from your application form, but actually we know that GCSE results are important in helping you decide what you want to apply for. And you may well attend some applicants events, and that might help you change your mind about what you want to do. So you don't have to finally confirm your GCSE choices until the interview that you have with us when you come at the start of the autumn term. So yeah, don't worry, because there is a lot of change that happens obviously in like GCSE results particularly. Okay, so yeah, just one other question. I'm going to ask this maybe to one of the upper sixth students, because maybe they've got a bit of hindsight where they could look back on it. Is there any particular advice you would give students to kind of get ready for preparing for A-level maths, or maybe just like coming to college generally? So Holly, is there any advice you would give them?
I would probably say to do like practice papers, probably the best thing. Yeah.
No, practice maths questions. Anything to add, Harry?
Yeah, I've already put a message on the chat, but I said focus on your GCSEs for the moment, and by the time you come here, just make sure you're really comfortable with all content so that you can be prepared to learn new topics. Okay, fantastic. Just in terms of workload generally, are there any tips that any of you have for managing workload? So do you tend to do your structured learning in college or at home or a mixture? Jess, what do you say?
I only took 3, so I tend to have quite a lot of spare time, and I try and do all of my structured learning and homework during like what a normal school day would be. So make sure that I'd still have a lot of free time for after college and weekends.
Okay, fantastic. Any other advice about managing workload from people? So maybe like some upper sixth students, how did you manage, particularly in the autumn term when you had your university applications and all that coursework? Were there any tips that you have? Harry, anything particular?
I just always try to do as much of the work like as soon as it's set. Don't leave anything to the last day, because then it will mount up and you'll have a lot of past year assignments.
Okay, great. Questions just come in. I think I'm going to ask Holly to answer again, more of an upper sixth sort of question. How often or how many sets of kind of mock exams, so practice exams, have you had for your A levels?
So we've just done mock exams a few weeks ago in the exam hall, which is really helpful because it's like actually how the exams will be. Those will be the final exams mock exams we'll have in the exam hall before the actual exams. But you'll do loads of practice papers in lessons. And I know in maths, it's pretty much you do further maths, it's pretty much every week you'll have a little topic test. They don't matter that much, but they're really helpful in making sure you know the content and yeah, practicing it.
Right, thank you. Okay, so very topical. A question's just coming about work experience. That's topical because tomorrow is actually the deadline where lower sixth are meant to have found some work experience by. Looking by judging at some places, they might not all have managed to do that. No one necessarily completes the work experience, but they need to kind of know what it is they want to do. So it might not be that you find work experience kind of really closely related to what it is that you want to study, but in the lower sixth, we would expect all of you to complete at least one day of work experience. And obviously we help you find it. We talk about it a lot when you join us. And we have also, if we've got any parents on the call, we have like a parent information evening about, we'll tell you about work experience as well. So Harry or Holly, did you do any work experience last year? And if so, what did you do? So Holly, first of all.
I did work experience in accounting, which is nothing like what I want to do. And it kind of made me realize that I don't want to do that. So it doesn't have to be, doesn't necessarily have to be to do with what you end up deciding to do at uni or apprenticeship. It just really helps you decide what you want to do.
Yeah, sometimes work experience that helps you realise what you don't want to do is as valuable as work experience where you realise, kind of reinforces what you want to do. Harry, did you do some work experience last year?
I also did some work experience at an accountancy firm.
And did you have the same as experience as Holly, or did it make you think that is something you'd like to explore more?
It made me realise I definitely want to get into finance, but not the accountancy side.
Fantastic. Now, have any of you organised your work experience? Matilda has. So tell us what work experience you've organised.
Yeah, so I organised a couple because I wanted to cover multiple bases. So one of them I've already done. I went to help out at school it was a high school in the radioactivity department. So I got to learn a lot. It was very interesting. And the second one, which is coming up, is marine engineering. So we're going to be going on a boat. It's something Reigate College has done a few years in a row for students. So that is something you can kind of consider, but there are very limited spaces, so it's difficult to get into. But yeah, hopefully that should be fun.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, so some of the work experience opportunities that you have to kind of apply for. So we help you write a CV and apply for work experience opportunities where they are maybe a bit more competitive. But a good question about somebody thinking about considering a degree in biochemistry, and that is a really popular choice, or that sort of field is a popular choice for students studying maths. Generally, biology, chemistry, and maths would be the classic combination. And a mixture. Some people would have done further maths, some people would have done EPQ. Thinking about a student who went on to do biochemistry at Oxford, he did three A levels and an EPQ, so maths, biology, and chemistry, and an EPQ. I can even remember what the EPQ was about. It was about basically aging and cellular processes involved in aging. But it's interesting because he looked at it from kind of quite an ethical perspective as well. So not only whether it's possible, how far it's possible to slow down kind of cellular processes to prevent aging, but also whether actually that's something we should be doing or not. And it was a really impressive EPQ, and obviously helped him, I think, at interview because he had a topic that he'd really researched in depth and he could talk about at interview. But likewise, further maths would also be very much valued. So I think it would depend on how much you liked maths. I think all of the students here really do love maths, and you do study 8 hours a week of maths if you're studying further maths. So that is quite a lot of maths to do if you're not really, really committed to it. So I think that's probably the main consideration with regards to biochemistry and whether maths or further maths would be most useful. I've got a question that I can ask. Is the latest you can drop a 4th subject? So there's no longer the option to complete ASs in subjects. So whereas a few years ago, so you might have older brothers or sisters perhaps that were at school or college doing their A-levels a while ago, where you might start with 4 subjects and take one as an AS level at the end of the first year. That's no longer an option. So if you're going to drop one of your 4 subjects, you really need to have done it by October half term at the latest, because otherwise you're just carrying on doing a subject that's obviously taking up time, distracting you perhaps from your other 3 subjects, and you're not going to get a qualification in it at the end. So we'd encourage you to, if you're going to take 4, and if you do end up dropping one, you would need to do that by October half term, kind of at the latest. Okay, so I think most of the questions in the chat we have answered. There's one about subject choice, which I'm going to come on to, about chemical engineering. Just a question about whether having a job counts as work experience. No, a part-time job, we've absolutely agreed that part-time jobs are incredibly valuable, but they don't count as work experience because on the whole, students, the job that people are doing as a part-time job isn't something they're really considering exploring as a career. There are ways where your part-time job can help you get work experience. So an example I often use is where somebody might be working as a lifeguard at a swimming pool, and they don't want to be a lifeguard. That's not their kind of career aim. They are interested in going into kind of leisure management, and that maybe through their job at a swimming pool, they could shadow the leisure centre manager for a day. And that would count as work experience, but not just your regular paid part-time job. We have got the last few questions. Okay, class size. So I don't know whether I can say that the biggest class size here is 22, but class sizes vary. So just I don't know whether you can roughly estimate. We don't know, but Holly, what would you say your kind of class sizes were in maths and physics roughly?
I would say in like further maths, the classes are definitely smaller. Whereas in physics, they're a lot bigger. I'd probably say further maths about probably 12, maybe. Actually, that might be too low. Maybe like 15, and then physics about 18, maybe.
Okay. Harry, you're in the sort of same subjects but different classes, I think, which is about the same for you.
Yeah, that's about right.
And in the lower 6, I don't know if anything to say about class size in the lower 6.
Kind of similar sizes. We've got about 18 in my maths, and I think full physics and philosophy, so about 20 students in both of those.
Anything different for Lulietta or Jess?
Lulietta and I are in the same maths class, and we have about 20, and there's 8 girls in our class, which is quite good for our year.
Yeah, if you are thinking, I mean, there is still a gender imbalance in, not on the panel, but generally in at college and just around the country, just generally in female students or students identified as female studying maths and physics. So, but certainly we do make sure that if you are female and studying maths or physics, you're not, or computer science as well, it's the same, and engineering, same would be in those subjects, that you know, you're not in a class on your own. So and there is a very supportive, I think, community of women studying these subjects. So that's hopefully answers that question. Yeah, let's have, okay, so first question, is the UCAS application process just a personal statement? No, so there's a form that you complete with lots of details about your A-levels you're studying, what GCSEs you've got, obviously your personal details, and the personal statement is part of that. And then your teachers also write a subject reference for you. If you're going on to study at Oxford, Cambridge, there will be other things that you have to do. So, Harry, do you want to tell us a bit about what else you had to do, as well as the personal statement and the UCAS form generally for your Cambridge application?
So after that, if you're successful in getting invited to an interview, you'll probably have 2 or 3 interviews. I had 2 myself, and then you might, for me, obviously I've got my entrance exam in June, but for other subjects, you'll probably have to sit an entrance exam in around October time as well.
Right. Okay. So yeah, if you're applying to Oxford, Cambridge, there will be other steps in the process. Also, obviously, we might have some of you that are thinking about medicine. So studying biology, chemistry, and maths might be an option for medicine. And again, there'll be application, admissions assessments and interview as well for those subjects. Good question. What A-levels would go well with maths and chemistry? So yeah, if you were thinking about anything to do with medicine or obviously biomedical science, biochemistry, you would need biology as well. But this is a really good question for Matilda, actually, because Matilda does an interesting combination of subjects. So Matilda, do you want to say a bit about the merits of studying an essay subject alongside 2 STEM subjects?
Yeah, definitely. I was in a kind of a similar position. I absolutely knew I wanted to do maths and physics, and I was really stuck on the third one. I went through lots of different options, considered chemistry, biology, psychology, but I ended up doing philosophy because I just thought, you know what, this is something I'm really interested in. I know I love it. I know I'll be motivated to do it. So yeah, I ended up just choosing something I really love because I'm going to be doing physics at university. So I don't really need anything else for that.
And sort of similar question to Holly, because Holly, you've got a fourth subject that is essay based as well. Do you want to talk about your fourth choice and why you chose it?
Yeah, so my fourth one is history. I chose it because I knew I wanted to do maths, but I didn't really know what the other two were going to be. So I decided I knew that I really liked history at GCSE, so I just decided to do that. And then I was thinking of biology initially. I didn't really know what to do with for the fourth one. And then I eventually decided on physics, actually in the summer after GCSEs. So you really don't have to decide on what A levels you want to do that early on, to be honest.
That's really interesting. So physics was almost the last one you chose, and it's what you end up wanting to apply to at university. Okay, so there's a couple more questions I know I haven't answered because they're going to come up in a bit about kind of like subjects and the need for particular degree subjects. So yeah, advice about subject choice. So maths is super useful for a range of subjects. So I mean, I can speak from personal experience as a parent as well. So my eldest son is studying economics and politics, and he's studying maths A level here. And that's been really helpful because although there's not very much maths in economics at A level, I think Harry would agree, wouldn't you? Not much maths at all. If you want to go on and study economics as a degree or part of your degree at later on, there is a lot of maths. So maths is very useful for a whole range of different subjects. And my daughter actually is studying politics and German, and she's studying maths here as well. So the further maths, as we've said, is really important for those courses, not just maths, but other courses that have a really high maths content. One thing to be aware of is that on universities' web pages, when they're looking at the entrance requirements, they can't really specify that further maths is a requirement. Very few universities will state it as a required subject because a lot of schools and colleges aren't able to offer further maths. As you're probably aware, maths teachers are quite hard to come by, let alone maths teachers that are able to teach further maths. So, and it tends to be schools in areas of kind of like lower socioeconomic background intakes that aren't able to offer further maths. So saying that you have to have further maths to be able to study those subjects at A level would be hugely discriminatory because there might be very, very able mathematicians who have just never had that option to study it. So, but having said that, it is massively advantageous, and you would be kind of at a disadvantage sometimes for the most competitive universities if you don't have it. Medics must study chemistry and realistically biology as well. It's actually a little bit maybe quite surprising to realise that chemistry is actually more important than biology for medicine. I think there'd be questions raised about why you weren't doing biology if you wanted to go on and study medicine, but it's actually chemistry that's the most essential. We've talked about women in STEM. Now, somebody raised a question about physics and chemical engineering. So chemical engineering is the one engineering degree that you don't have to have physics for. Having said that, if you were thinking about engineering, considering chemical engineering, if you didn't do physics, so say you did chemistry, maths, and something else, that would, if you changed your mind and you wanted to go into a different field of engineering, that would obviously limit your choices. I would strongly recommend you having a look at the website that I've put a QR code to there called Informed Choices. It's a website that was put together by the Russell Group universities, and it can help guide you about what A levels would be best to choose if you have a degree subject in mind. It's really useful. If you have been kind of maybe again you've got older brothers or sisters, or schools might have talked to you about what we call facilitating subjects. That's quite sort of an old-fashioned phrase now, really. Facilitating subjects was a phrase that competitive universities used for kind of like approved traditional subjects, which typically were maths, the sciences, English literature, modern foreign languages, history, geography, and history and geography. Very traditional kind of national curriculum, sort of key stage 3 subjects, really. If you are going on to study maths, physics, engineering, and those courses at degree level, you still need maths and physics. But a third subject, as I said, if you or in addition to further maths, could be anything, as you've heard. So we've got philosophy represented here, and history. Harry's fourth subject is economics. So there's a whole range of other subjects that you could study alongside those STEM subjects. But do have a look at that Informed Choices website. It's really useful and helpful for helping you decide. And you'll get lots of advice about final subject choice when you come for interview at the beginning of next term as well. So in terms of what to do next before we wrap up, work hard, get the best GCSE grades you can. I think what Harry was saying earlier about just concentrating on your GCSEs now is probably the best thing that you can do. Enjoy your last few weeks of college or school, because they'll go really quickly. There will be some new starters activities on the website. And also, if you're thinking about further maths and you missed the further maths applicants event, on the new starters section of the website, there is a recording of a further maths applicants event that we did. So you might see some familiar faces on it from this evening's event. But if you want to find out more about further maths, you can also find that information in the new starters active section of the website. The new starters activities about Aspire, Relate, EPQ, and possible EPQ topics you might like to explore. We'd also encourage you to just maybe think about your subjects beyond what you're learning just at GCSE. This is a slide that we use in Aspire. All of those kind of logos represent ways that you can explore your subject beyond your lesson. So I'll just point out a couple, because I think things like TED Talks you might already be familiar with, and the New Scientist I'm sure you've heard of. But in the top right-hand corner there, you've got something called The Conversation. That's a news website that is put together, and the articles are written by academics. So they're topical stories, and you can search for them by kind of science and tech or different kind of topics, areas that you're interested in. And they're really useful for exploring. That's where I found out about the chap that had lost his Bitcoin folder in a rubbish dump. He was trying to use maths to work out whether the probability of him finding the Bitcoin folder in the rubbish dump was worth him spending money to actually buy the rubbish dump. You might have heard about that story. It was on other news outlets as well. If you are a student here, you'll have free access to we have a way of getting you free access to the Financial Times. So looking at kind of like just general kind of news stories related to maths, physics, whatever you want to study is also a good idea. But as I said, most of all, just good luck with your GCSEs. You can follow college on Facebook and Instagram, also on LinkedIn. If you have any questions specifically about Aspire, there's the Aspire email address there. Once we finish the call, please do stay and complete the online survey that will come up on your screen. It's really useful for us to have some feedback to help us improve this event for future years. So I'll just say thank you very much to our panel. They can always wave goodbye and they all wish you good luck in your GCSEs, I'm sure. So good luck, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us this evening.